Today we've been hiking in the Coco Nino forest.
So we're here today with our special guest Samantha, and we're going to do a video on something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, which is the benefits of healthy eating for our mind, body, and spirit, and sort of ideas about being vegan, vegetarian, whatever, eating less meat, less products that harm the environment, those types of ideas. And Samantha, being the master in this subject, is the perfect guest for me to have on. So I just want to ask you first, what's your ideas of healthy eating? What roles have that played in your life as of yet so far?
So healthy eating has been a pretty large role in the majority of my life. I would say that on my journey of self growth, it started with my physical vessel in my body. So starting with what was I eating, and then what nutritional and supplements was I having, and then how was that affecting me physically in the sense of like working out and being a top performing in my body.
What made you realize that you had to start eating healthier? What made you want to do so?
Oh my gosh. So probably realizing that I was waking up mental fogs. I didn't have energy like I would like. I didn't feel good from the food that I was eating. I have GERD syndrome. I know you do too. So I was having a lot of symptoms from that, and then I realized that maybe some of the problems that I was experiencing might be the quality of food that I was eating and where that food was coming from. I might be also taking in those feelings and those emotions from like meat products or even just low vibe quality.
You mean because it said that when animals are killed, basically when they're slaughtered for meat and stuff, a lot of times they're in, is this, follow me if this is correct, but a lot of times they're in very bad, stressful situations, and they're like packed in and this and that. So not only are they being slaughtered, but also they're pretty miserable beforehand. They're really anxious and afraid. So it's said, studies show that that kind of that's carried with them when you eat the meat. It's carried to the meat, and then like the energy, which is more subtle, which I guess can't really be seen by our scientific methods, but it's lower energy, lower vibration, and then you eat that, so that basically becomes your physical vessel.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, they say how important it is to like bless your food. So if you think about it, like blessing your food can only go so far. So if you think about like what were these animals experiencing and what were they going through, like it's not only in like in that moment, like their entire lives had been almost like just filled with sorrow. And then also you have to think, we talk about our nutrients in the sense of oh, this is this much protein and this much that, and the macro and the micro. But also you have to think, if it's not an animal that has been in the wild, how would it have like muscle functions? Because it's not moving its muscles. How would it have like healthy fat? How would it have healthy muscle? You know, these animals weren't moving and
Right.
they weren't living and they weren't like, you know, chasing and doing all these things that would provide healthy nutrients in the body. Like they're not eating the grass, which is getting the phytonutrients from the sun. You know, they're just being
Yeah.
fed grains. So basically, you're eating an animal that's just been fed grains, and grains aren't even that good on a high amount in your diet. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. So it's kind of a, yeah, and I like how you said about the praying can only take you so far. Because I do think worshiping your food and praying over your meals and say offering it to God or sanctifying it or whatever, could make it better and more pure, and does, but also it still depends on the kind of food that you're putting in.
100%.
And so before we get on this subject, still, I want to ask you, what do you think there's a big difference between what people think is eating healthy and what actually is eating healthy? I know a lot of times people think that just eating less food maybe is healthy, or eating less sugar, or going on a diet, but really we're talking about something much more profound than that. We're talking about affecting really your mind, body, and spirit. So what do you think about that, and what do you mean by, what foods do you think are healthy to eat?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have a misconception of what's good for them and what's not. So also, what's good for me isn't going to be good for you. So everybody's also completely different in the biomechanical nature and makeup of their body. So a lot of people will just read a book too and think, oh, this is what I need to eat. But a lot of it's intuitive eating. So a lot of it is understanding, like, does this feel good to you? You know, if you're eating something and you're having experiences of like bloating or nausea or anything like that, food, just because it might be like brown rice or something that's good for you, you know, it might not actually be good for you. And then we think of like, oh, well, this says vegan, but you know, is it made with like soybean oil and all these extra things? You know, just because something has a label doesn't necessarily make it healthy for you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, 100%. So I think a big component of healthy eating is, can you grow it yourself, and are you getting an adequate amount of fruits, vegetables, and greens? Because these things are so important that we're not really incorporating. Like, we might be like, oh, well, I didn't eat this or this, but have you eaten this and that? You know, like, just because you cut out sugar or fats or carbs, like, have you had a salad today? You know, I'm big on salad every day. So
Yeah, and so yeah, thank you. So I wanted to say, I was trying for a long time to start to cut out meat, to become vegetarian, this and that, but I didn't make healthy food and have healthy alternatives, so I would always fail. But the reason I had gotten the idea in the first place is because as I continued in my spiritual practices and as my awareness grew, it became more difficult for me to, one, consume those foods because I knew what was going on with it, and two, for the environment as well. Like, I realized that there was a soul in all beings, it was so much harder for me. Not that I still don't, you know, I haven't eaten meat in a long time, but I still eat some fish and eggs and much less dairy, but still some dairy. But it became more difficult for me to, I was more conscious of what I was doing, basically, that I'm eating these animals and that they are being killed in these inhumane ways, and they're just the same as me. And even if I look at my dog, like, dogs get eaten as animals in China and stuff like that. So it's I started realizing that it affects the environment to a huge extent as well as my awareness grew. So I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I know we use so much of our resources, even so much water and everything, going towards consumption of animal and meat products and stuff. So I don't know, do you think that it's, one, it has to be healthier for the environment, I would say, when people eat less meat and less dairy, because it's less of a toll on them, and we actually could live without it. What do you think about that?
yeah. Well, on top of that, so we have all these fields that we use for cattle. So we have tons of like soybean fields and corn fields, especially in Indiana, but we also have all these cattle fields, and we're not really understanding that that land that could be used for farming and agriculture, we're using it as, well, some of it's as fuel, but a lot of it is just wasted space to house cattle. So we're not really understanding the impact of the meat industry is one of our top providers of greenhouse gases. And I mean, a lot of people want to joke and say it's because cows fart and stuff, but you know, a lot of it is because like we're using so much land and natural resources to butcher and slaughter, when instead we could be using those to grow more agricultural products. So that's one part of it, 100% of affecting the entire environment in an unhealthy way. But then there's also like the toll of you know, we have so much of each animal to the point where we have to farm animals now specifically for like food consumption.
Food, yeah, they're being groomed for that, and they treat them. I know one thing that I think is important. There's a book or a movie a friend gave me. I'll put the title of it in the description. I can't remember it, but it showed our meat industry, our fish industry, and everything, and it was really brutal in the way they were treated and slaughtered and taken care of, and the whole process was honestly very disturbing. And I know a lot of people, I try and show it to, they won't watch it because they're like, it'll ruin me eating meat and this and that, or it'll, you know, I don't want to know about that. But I believe much differently, because I did watch it and still ate meat afterward. But I think at least I have to be conscious of what I'm doing. So at least if I'm going to do it, know what I'm doing and do the little bit I can to change, rather than, yeah, you never want to be in like blind ignorance of something, you know? Yeah. That's no way to be free, is like, I know it's terrible, but I don't want to know. You should at least be aware of what it is that you're doing. So go ahead and eat the meat or the fish if you want to, but know everything that's entailed in that process.
Yeah, you can't just have like the fruits of labor without the suffering. But yeah, that cognitive dissonance of society when it comes to the meat industry is insane. Like, so many people don't think that there's any issue, which is fine. If you know of people that they raise their cattle, they butcher their cattle, they treat their cattle well. But it's a completely different story when you just go to a store and then you buy meat and you have no idea where it came from. You have no idea of the suffering that entailed. It's kind of like a sense of entitlement, to think that you're better than this animal.
It is. And like you said about the taste, a lot of times people are like, but it tastes so good. And it's not to bash anybody. And well, one, I realized that my taste buds have changed as I began to eat healthier much dramatically. But two, it's just, you got to think about it consciously. Like, how would you like if people ate humans and they were like, well, yeah, but it tastes so good, and that's their only justification for why it's okay to slaughter you. So I think it's just that, like you said, at least being conscious and not making it seem like the animals or the fish or whatever aren't beings, that they don't exist as like their own individual soul. And what I want to talk about too is in how it applies to mind, body, and spirit, and in terms of spiritual practice. It's like in yogic tradition, one is non-violence is a part of Ashtanga yoga, 8-limbed path of yoga, and non-violence means you want to cause as least harm as you can. So say you eat plants versus animals. Plants are still alive as well, and some of them do have to be, taken up out of the ground and this and that. So it still, I think, causes an extent of harm. Of course, it's necessary for survival to eat something, but I think it's much less harm, and I think they feel differently and less than animals do. And animals and fish have feelings almost like we do because their minds are more developed. So I think it causes less harm eating plants than it does eating animals.
Yeah. Well, and there's also on the 8-limb path, like one of the yamas is moderation. I believe Brahmacharya. So there is like that moderation too, because I'm the type of person where I 100% believe plant eating is going to be better for your spiritual growth, mostly because of the society that we're in now. Like, people aren't taking care of their own animals and then slaughtering them. But there is that essence of, do you own your own farm? Like, if you took care of your animals and you let them live like a healthy, long life, or you let them experience like loving kindness. I do have friends that have that. They have their own like permaculture farm, and that seems so much more sustainable in the long term for a society. If you were to have, say a portion of meat on your plate.
And it was limited and not tons every day.
Yeah, and that would be so much more conducive for a spiritual being, because in that sense, like, you're still experiencing the natural flow of the universe, which is animals eat other animals and such. That's how predators go. But it doesn't mean that we still have to act like unconscious predatory beings. But I do think that when you incorporate more plants, vegetables, legumes, and the such, the suffering isn't the same in any way, shape, or form.
I like that. I noticed since I started eating better, I do feel 100% different. And the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was how it applies to yoga and meditative practices, because it's said by a lot of yogis that the vibrations, the energy that comes out of the food you eat, which everything's energy, so of course it'd be hard to deny that, and changes not only your physical body but your thinking process as well, and actually affects your mind. And higher vibrational foods make it easier to do different spiritual practices, to do meditation, to do yoga, to do stuff like that. And I remember I even told you that Ramana Maharshi, the Indian saint, he even said, and he was a very famous saint, that more important than anything you do is what you eat. And he focused on that so importantly, which I thought was interesting. Kind of how it makes up your mind and body and everything. Did you have anything on that?
100%. So you can't deny everything is energy, and you can't deny that everything has a vibration. So whether that's, this ground, which is vibrating so intensely, that it seems solid to the air around us, everything has an energetic and a vibration. And that also goes into alkaline and acidic, alkaline and acidic. So our bodies, the more alkaline they are, on top of being high vibe, the more smooth that your process can go. So on one hand, we do need things that are acidic, but the more alkaline that we allow the body to be, I believe the better our processes can flow. So then on top of that, when we have food that is a higher vibe, when we become what we eat. Our cells reproduce like every 30 days or so. So if you took 30 days and recreated your whole diet within 30 days after, you would be a completely different being cell to cell, because all your cells have been replenished. So I don't think we take into account how much our food creates who we are. So having that high vibrational food is so important, because how could you allow yourself to have a higher consciousness when you're dulling yourself with the food that you're putting into your body? So I mean, and that goes even farther than just the meat and the vegetables. That goes into like blessing your food and allowing yourself to really understand why you're doing what you're doing for your body.
Yeah, that goes into kind of making it sacred too. Like in Buddhism, actually, Thich Nhat Hanh talked about a lot in other Buddhist mindful eating.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important, which I try to work on, like I've always grew up just scarfing down food and still do often, but mindful eating is a way to savor your food, like show reverence for it, eat slower, take more bites, and you actually enjoy it more that way as well. And it's done, as we were talking about the other day, more as an end to itself instead of an act that you kind of just unconsciously rush through, or just for like animalistic gratification. We're like, oh yeah, that burger's delicious, and you just destroy it and aren't like conscious in there at all. So I guess if anything, my kind of idea is that you can't give things up until you're ready. So like, because I did at other points in my life, I tried giving up meat before I was ready, and I couldn't, and I'd go back and eat more than ever. So I think it is an unfolding process, and like as my awareness and spiritual practice developed, what I felt comfortable eating and putting into me changed, and some foods that I could eat so much of before wouldn't even make me feel sick in the future, or just not good, like bogged down. So I think it is a process. I don't think you could like push it away, but I still think it's important for us, as we said, to be conscious of what it is that I'm doing. Like that's the best way for things to change, I think, is people to develop awareness, and rather than, like you said, ignorance, at least be conscious of what it is that is going on. And then over time, as like the collective consciousness of people changes, hopefully some of these, and there is lots of conscious people, but hopefully some of these things will change. Because one thing, before I let you take over, that I did notice is, but once I started eating vegan and vegetarian food, there's actually tons of options, and most restaurants have them and everything like that. So I used to always think, like, where would you be able to eat? And I heard people say that, but really, I realized that wasn't the case. And if more people did it, then it would really be easily accessible.
Yeah, 100%. People don't. Yeah, and then it's not as hard as you would think also, because you realize you don't really want to eat out as much. You don't really want to go to places that aren't preparing high vibrational meals. So then you want to create your own meals anyways. But also, I think a huge goal for people that are interested in like conscious eating is the idea of long-term balance. So instead of trying to throw themselves in and do this and do that and all these things, like breaking it down little by little and finding what feels good for you and creating that long-term balance, and knowing, like, I just experienced this with a friend. We were talking about our guru that had passed away, and she was like the healthiest person you would ever think, and her body was still taken over, by an illness. So understanding that these things aren't being done because you're trying to completely like change the way that your life is going to pan out or something. Sometimes it's just trying to create a little bit of balance and finding something that makes you feel a little bit better day by day. Things are still going to happen. Things are still going to come up. You might still have the diseases that you have and the illnesses that you had, but finding that balance over time to allow yourself that space.
I like that. Beautiful.
And now here's a break with a message from our sponsors. Are you tired of paying too much to H&R Block or others to prepare your tax return? Are you finally done pulling your hairs out over TurboTax or worrying about whether you completed your Form 1040 correctly? Well, worry no longer. With Momcilovic Tax and Accounting, you're in great hands. With over 35 years of experience and over 250 clients to show for, CPA Mile Momcilovic is the accountant you can trust. Straightforward, inexpensive, professional. All it takes is 3 easy steps. Step 1. Email or text us for more information. Step 2, receive an invite email to load your data. Step 3, review and sign your returns electronically in a safe and secure way. The best part about it, he can do your taxes and accounting no matter what state you're in. If you want a knowledgeable licensed expert, he's your guy, with tax returns starting at $125 for single filers and $150 for joint filers. You are guaranteed a fair price and excellent service. Stop the worrying and leave it up to the professional. Email Mile at info@momsylvicaccounting.com, text him at 773-578-0996, or go to momsylvicaccounting.com. Website link and contact information can be found in the description below. To learn more, follow Mom Sylvic Tax and Accounting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Also, if you have any tax or accounting related questions, feel free to contact Mile free of charge. Start your journey of a stress-free tax season today.